Good morning. No, it isn't. It's good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us in our Brown Bag Lunch series. This has been our 7th series of the year, and we are thrilled with the participation. And again today, the lines are nearly full. We have an opportunity to have 150 lines, and we almost have them filled, which is exciting. I am thrilled to introduce Dr. Hassan Avlak, who is the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition. And I want you to pay attention to the term talent acquisition because that's different than recruitment. It's different than what we traditionally think about. And Hassan will talk about that a lot in our presentation today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Hassan. I want to say 2 things. Number one, if you have questions, and I've already got almost 17 questions that people have sent, if you have questions during the presentation, please email them to llutz@fedcap.org, and I will try to compile all the questions that seem similar to one another and ask Hassan those questions. And if you have things that you want to ask Hassan after the presentation, I'm sure that he will be willing to do so. So I think that's it, and Hassan, I will turn it over to you. But Hassan, you have your phone on mute.
Thank you very much, Lori. Good afternoon, all. First, I want to start off by apologizing for the raspiness of my voice. I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, and I'm currently doing this WebEx in Texas. Now, there's about 105 degrees here between the travel between New York and here and an AC and then the heat. I'm hoping I'm not coming down with something, so I will be sipping something, and this is ice. This is some hot tea, green tea, so excuse me for that, and I apologize. But again, thank you guys for the time here. And we have a robust area that I definitely want to talk to. And I'm going to go right into it. First and foremost, one of the quotes that is dear to me and the team and to a lot of the hiring managers is by Steve Jobs. And it reads, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people to tell us what to do." And this is something that is going to lead us into today's dialogue and presentation. And we firmly believe that when it comes to helping not only attract great talent, but also keeping talent as well. So I'm hoping that you're able to see that, and we're going to move forward, but that's going to be the start of our dialogue today. I'm not going to go through the specifics of the agenda, but there's a number of things that we're going to talk about regarding strategy, laws of attraction, top-notch talent, identifying the talent, some of the metrics that are being used, and also the collaboration between our hiring managers as well as the talent acquisition team. I would be amiss if I don't start off by saying and really talking about the unemployment rate. So the good news, bad news scenario here for our economy, for our families and our friends, unemployment rate historically is at a 17-year low. What that basically means, and to the bullet points, when you take a look then at the low unemployment rate, what does that mean? Less active job seekers. Active job seekers are critical because that then takes the talent acquisition team as well, again, as the hiring managers, a little harder to find the talent that we need because they have jobs. So there's some ideas and thoughts that we're going to talk about as regards to branding and looking for that talent and looking at passive seekers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But again, good news, bad news, good news for our economy, good news for our family and friends, but a little bit challenging as it relates to trying to get some talent in-house. I love this slide because, again, this is one of my favorite movies, by the way, but help us help you. When I say us, I mean the talent acquisition team, all right? So we are not working in a silo. There have been a number of programs, and specifically, if you take a look at some of the folks in the education area, some of the folks in workforce development, area, those hiring managers, and even some of the hiring managers and the engagement team, they understand that in order to really get talent, they too have to get out there, and we've been talking about this, the talent acquisition team with those specific hiring managers, get out there and post some of their jobs on their own LinkedIn pages, on their own Facebook pages and Instagram pages, just like I consider, again, a separate group of recruiters. So you guys are helping us, our organization, and with your network of folks and friends that you know. One of the things that we've been successful as our organization, when you take a look then at Orientation Day as an example, and one of the things that I have said to the group is that look around the room. You were brought in here because you're talented, you're skilled, and you're going to add a lot of value to our organization. Association, in my mind, is like assimilation. So you assimilate and associate folks that have your similar talents and drives. Please hand out some business cards, give out talent acquisition team email and names and things of that nature, and bring on folks and send over folks that we may not have touched because you know those folks, and it has been successful with that group. So I want to share that particular piece with you, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we can customize some of our LinkedIn pages and use it from a standpoint of attracting talent. Networking at events, a lot of our employees, and especially in the fantastic workforce development group, they go to different functions and events. And just recently, a few of our employees really participated in the fair in New York City, a pride parade. And it was absolutely fantastic. One or two folks were able to talk about our organization. We wore some shirts and talked about the opportunities in our organization. And from that standpoint alone, that's branding. From that standpoint alone, we're also talent acquisition, right? So again, and we're going to talk more about this, and I'm just giving you tidbits. You talk about recruitment. Recruitment is behind the desk. Recruitment is just HR doing recruitment. Talent acquisition is partnering with the hiring managers, partnering with the employees to really seek out talent, specific talent, understanding what we need, reaching areas that the talent acquisition team, in some cases, can't get to or do not get to. And it's really partners. It's almost like an extension of our organization as such. I love the third bullet, and we've done this successful, but there's always room for improvement. We have a lot of educated employees, vast amounts of education and experiences. We are in, and again, I'm preaching to the choir here, we are in 17 different states. We have well over 4,000 employees. That alone should tell you the amount of colleges and universities and areas that we can touch as a team. And I say team, again, because employees, hiring managers, as well as the talent acquisition team, that's a full group of folks bringing in and trying to identify some talent. So when you look at helping us help you, helping us, the us is talent acquisition team. Helping you is bringing in quality candidates, quality employees. And we're going to define what quality is in a second to meet and exceed our needs as a team. As I mentioned, there is a way for us, and again, and this is extremely helpful, I'm going to say this again, there are a few employees that are already doing this in their own personal social media LinkedIn accounts. Here's just a sample of what I'm talking about. Hello friends, I work for a dynamic organization that serves the needs of children and adults who face barriers. Again, this could be customized. We currently have an opening for, it could be case manager, it could be janitor, it could be teacher, it could be teacher's assistant, anything that you want to put in here. If you know of anyone interested in this position that wants to make a difference in others' lives, please have them email me their resume. And then from a talent acquisition perspective, once you guys receive these resumes, you reach out to the talent acquisition team, then we will screen them and keep you abreast every step of the way of the progress. We will even, in all of our cases, especially if there are referrals, we're going to reach back out to you, the employee, and say, hey, Margaret, as an example, you just referred over Todd. Todd was okay. Here's some of the challenges. I believe that he would have to work on this and bring this to the table in order for him to come to the organization. So we give that specific feedback to most of our employees and most of our hiring managers, especially if they're referrals. That's important to us. So I wanted to share that sample social media post that's working. And again, you see that works well from a branding standpoint. We'll talk more about that in a future slides. Laws of attraction, and I'm hoping you like the creative slides. I got a lot of help with this, not only from the talent acquisition team, but members of the engagement team and others. We must brand ourselves on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Glassdoor, and LinkedIn. I'm going to talk a second or two about Glassdoor. Ironically, we have a number of folks on Glassdoor, again, who are saying some negative comments. We do have a few positive comments, but it's important to us, it behooves us to get on Glassdoor and to give some positive feedback about our experiences as employees. It's very similar to when we look at restaurants and we go to Yelp as an example, and we put in some comments, right? The more negative comments people are going to read, they're going to look at that. But let's put some of the positive experience, because I can tell you, I hear positive experience about our organization on a daily basis. So when we do have some negative comments out there that when folks are looking to come on board, they look at that as opposed to, because there's a few of those. And I want more positive comments from our employees out there so we can attract even more talent. The second bullet is the key, and we know a little bit about this. Promote and communicate how great we are focusing on our mission, again, because, again, we touch hundreds and thousands of lives. So that's important, things that we do. It's amazing that every time that I talk to folks, they are astonished about the footprint that we have in a lot of the communities, the effect we have in a lot of the communities, and what we do. So share those stories with folks. And that's going to help us as you share those stories, help our branding. That's going to help us become the premier organization out there. Sometimes I sit on the train.
Hassan, this is Lori.
Yes.
I'm trying to interrupt you to ask a quick question because I didn't mean to interrupt that story. But there's a couple of questions around this where you're at right now in the presentation that I just wanted to address. One of them has to do with the idea of creating brand awareness in the community. Okay. How do you do that when we're as diverse as we are? What is the relationship with talent acquisition team at corporate services and increased brand awareness that causes us to be known as the premier not-for-profit to work for? That's the first question.
Excellent, and thank you very much for that question. And again, we talked a little bit about our footprint in 17 or more different states. We talked a little bit about our uniqueness. It's important, and I'm going to give you some examples. There are a few programs out there, especially under the FedCap umbrella, Easter Seals. When you take a look at branding, when we're out there, we're trying to hire for, as an example, Easter Seals in a certain area, be it Rochester, and they don't know about FedCap, but they do know about Easter Seals. It's imperative that, and we've work closely with the engagement team to get some things, some posters and some flyers out there in the community, be it the churches, the local organizations. Can I tell you, even the supermarkets on the bulletin boards. We have this large supermarket chain in a lot of areas, especially upstate New York, called Wegmans. That, ironically, have brought in, from a branding perspective, people are aware of who FedCap and Easter Seals, what we do. So to directly answer that query, it's really about working with the talent acquisition team and engagement team to get some marketing materials out there so we understand, so folks who hear about our organization, they know who we are and what we do. It's about that positive message to what we're talking about from an attraction and branding standpoint.
Thanks, Hassan. That's great. And one of the individuals, and I love this question, actually posed just now, what is our relationship to community colleges and how do we use community colleges as a feeder source into, not just community colleges, but any colleges, as a feeder source into the agency?
Very good question. We in two ways. So in two ways, and a few of us who are in academia understand and know what Handshake is, right? So Handshake is a premier way of getting to folks who are currently in school looking for jobs, folks who are graduating, folks who have already graduated, and we post jobs, and it is not just to one college, but a number of colleges throughout the U.S. So Handshake is one way of electronically getting out there and branding and linking into colleges that from one location, so out there in the universe. The other way is, and I can honestly tell you, from workforce development to some of the folks in education practice area, they have partnered with talent acquisition teams and say, hey, you do know there's a local college here who have this specialized skill set, who have these certain programs that we can tap into. And we have partnered with them and done some college events, some college fairs, specifically got in contact with the directors of career counseling. We have had opportunity, and this is one of the better things, and I can give you some examples, where we've gone to the colleges, and instead of just sitting at a table and branding ourselves and walking around getting folks to come to our table, we have led the dialogue. They usually have a break. So during the break, you have speakers talk about certain things, about recruitment and talent and how to do resumes. We have actually led those discussions. So when I say we, meaning the hiring managers and talent acquisition team. So during that power hour, what they're called, we are getting resumes, we're talking to people, we're having that interesting dialogue, and then after we go back to the table, and by that time, our line's along, right? And a lot of people are interested. They know who we are. It's branded. Who's FedCap? And all of its agencies under that umbrella.
Excellent. Thank you, Hassan. And as we move forward, I've got a lot of questions about and I'm sure you'll get there, but I just wanted to tee up. I've got just a slew of questions coming in and that were given to me before about the keeping of the good talent. So, and you and I have had conversations about that. So just to give you a heads up.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I go through this next slide, and again, I'm going to, it's almost like teasers, right? So I introduce a point, and we elaborate on a point as we move forward. So we're talking about attracting and keeping. So I want to take this opportunity. I was going to do it a little later, but I can start now. Lori Lutz had gathered a number of talented researchers. I'm going to call them researchers. They're employees amongst in our organization, and we call the onboarding solutions team. And their presentation was so impactful. They had the opportunity to look into what the best practices, world-class type things, because we're going to be a $1 billion company very soon. So that being said, we need not only to attract the talent with the help of our hiring managers and our employees, but also keep the talent. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know if this is going to be a question coming up, the biggest frustration that I have as the leader in talent acquisition is I can plead and I can bring in talent and I can say, hey, Michael, I know you weren't looking at our organization, but we are a premier organization. We do this. We're in 17 states. We have over 4,000 employees, and what you bring to the table from that organization to our organization would be great. So he'll ponder. You know, I'll call him back, and my team will call him back and say, please look at some of the things. Here's a video or two, right? And then at the end of the day, Michael will come on board. But then 3 months, 4 months, or 5 months in, we lose Michael. So that's my pet peeve, and that's that things that I'm working on with Lori and some of our leaders, and especially her fabulous onboarding team that we put together from a retention standpoint. But let me focus here. Our onboarding should not be just one day. It should not just be a couple of days. It needs to be a world-class 1-year onboarding, right? Ongoing engagement, ongoing communication with our employees, and that's key. Employee appreciation is important. Everyone likes to be appreciated. One of the things that I have said in the past is that you praise publicly and you condemn privately. As leaders, that's important. A lot of us have to maintain that focus, right? So employee appreciation is important. I had the opportunity to work with a few programs, and I probably touched, and since I've been here, a little over 900 people to be trained. And one of the things they know, the folks who've trained with me know a term called psychological paycheck. A psychological paycheck is just that. Is, hey, good morning, Peter. Great job on the presentation. Good morning, Marianne. I want to thank you very much for your value. I love the fact that you come in on time, and that's important to our clients. That's important to our customers. That in itself is a way of thanking and appreciating our employees. One of the things that the engagement team has done recently, and we have done it a little bit, is talk a little bit about how we need to do this more often around every program. So that's, for me, that's key, and for us, that's key. Hiring managers who are leaders. That just means that there is a difference, and again, preaching to the choir here, but there is a huge difference between managers and leaders. We need to identify when we're hiring. If it's a manager position, they have leadership skills. If it's a manager position, they know how to engage employees. That's a leadership piece. Lori and I had a great dialogue the other day of making sure that we bring on folks and we start assessing the talent a little bit more by certain assessment tests, not just by the interview process, right? And these assessment tests are going to be the best-in-class assessment tests, asking questions specifically about not just what you bring to the table, but how do you lead people? How do you nurture and grow people's and grow your employees in the organization? Succession planning is key. So you talk about keeping, succession planning is identifying the next person in line. If we have not done that, we're doing our organization a disservice. The last thing on this bullet is biannual performance reviews. When I say biannual, no surprises, at least twice a year. So we have employees that are with us. We sit with them the 6-month mark and we ask them, okay, let's talk a little bit about your performance. And here's where 90% of us need to improve, this last bullet. And that is, okay, employee, okay, Jasmine, okay, Griselda, tell me a little bit about how I can be a better manager to you. Tell me areas that I can improve on to make you more effective, to be more value added. So again, that key, 90% of us are not doing consistently. We need to work on that. And to believe it or not, these are best practices that our leaders and our organizations are learning that's important. Let's talk a little bit about this strategy. And the talent acquisition strategy. And it's important to know, it's important about structure and defining and working with we have well over 50 different programs in our organization, right? As a small story without going too deep, when I started a little less than 3 years ago, we had 2 recruiters and an onboarding person on the team. 70 or more, no, 70, between 70 and 80 requisition job openings. Let's fast forward to where we are today. We have now, we are at over 260 different positions in our organization to this date, and we are in 17 different states, and we have well over, again, we talked about that, we are in a lot of different areas. So that growth in less than 3 years for a non-for-profit is staggering. So we need to look at strategies and ways to do a better job collaborating, and we have some practices and structure involved with that. Quickly, just to go through this, these are just a few of the metrics that we look at based on different programs. And a lot of you know this already, so forgive the time here, but a few of you do not. Quality of hire is key. That's number one, because when we take a look at hiring employees, we're looking to, all right, how do we measure if they're great? How do we measure if we did a good job from a talent acquisition perspective? And that should be measured by their contribution to our organization and their performance reviews, right? So we have an employee who's adding tremendous amount of value, and their hiring team believe that their performance has been stellar. That in itself is a quality of hire. This is an area, though, that we're working on because we're not consistent in our organization and making sure that we give that ongoing feedback to our employees in a timely manner. So quality of hire is a metric that we're working on together with our leadership team and our hiring managers. Cost per hire?
Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Hassan, I have a question specifically related to that. In some of the presentations, you have discussed in the past the 3 strikes rule, which allows a recruiter or an interviewer to eliminate potential candidates. What are some of the variables that are key to, first of all, this elimination, and then on the flip side, to securing innovative and brilliant leaders? So what are those 3 strikes, and then what are key to securing innovative and brilliant leaders?
Okay, I'm going to answer that the best that I can. Just wrote down so I don't forget anything as my mind is racing. So 3-strike rule, first of all, it's imperative that we know, team, what we're looking for. And I've talked to many hiring managers before, not just based off the job description, because the job description in most cases not doing a great job and as a standalone tool. So what's needed to move our organization strategically, right? What's needed to grow our particular program or practice? Once we define that in itself is what we should be using to attract folks, right? I always use the corny analogy is just like if you want to get married. What type of mate are you looking for? You got to know what type of mate. The full package, not just breathing. It's important. So that's number one. If we don't know that, that strike one is not good. Number two is allowing others to provide some input in the hiring process. So it can't just be between the hiring managers and TA, right? It has to be, and this is one of the successful things 1 or 2 of the programs have done in our organization. If, hypothetically, if you have a direct care associate and the hiring manager is hiring more direct care associates, the hiring manager should be part of the interview, and the direct care associates at your performers should be part of that hiring process because they're living it day by day, day to day. So that's important. If you do not have that, plus the other things involved, which is TA and hiring managers involved in that hiring process, and that's strike two. The third thing, and it's important, is to think outside the box, right? Here's an example. One of the, and the thinking outside the box is not just about specific interview questions. Behavioral interview questions, situational interview questions are important, not just your standard questions. One of the things that we have learned in the last year and a half as I'm traveling, doing workshops on behavioral interviewing, is that a lot of our employees don't know the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is when you're interviewing candidates, you have less than 45 minutes in one case, maybe 30 to 45 minutes. You should allow those candidates to speak 80% of the time, and you a little less than 20% of the time. I'm going to be transparent here and tell you that was not happening. We had hiring managers who were speaking the majority of the time, so I always asked them, or my team said, if you're speaking all that time, what are they learning? I mean, what are you getting out of the interview if you're speaking that much? And the response was, well, I want to tell them about the culture. I want to tell them about my area. But those are things that should have been vetted out before. So if that's not happening, that's a third strike. And Lori, forgive me, because that was the first part of your question. What was the second part?
The second part is that you have talked, I think, a lot in the past about there's 3 strikes which allow a recruiter or interviewer to eliminate potential candidates. And what are those? It's an interesting idea that they do or say things that you say, nope, not the right person.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. And we just recently had a workshop, and I'm going to thank you for that because if this is important, just working out, I'm going to say this. If you have given a 30-minute slot to interview someone, hypothetically, start the conversation off with the person, introduce yourself and say, hey, Peter, just want to let you know, I want to thank you very much for coming in. I know that the talent acquisition team set up about 30 to 45 minutes to interview you. I usually take about 15, 20 minutes with you. What does that do? That then sets the parameters just in case the hire is not good by the 3-strike rule. The first strike is if the candidate does not know enough about the organization, enough about the job itself, automatically, that to me is strike one. And not just strike one, and I'm going to be transparent again, not just strike one for the candidate, but also that's a conversation I'm hoping that our hiring managers and our leaders are saying with my team and myself, right? Hey, Hassan, hey, Tracy, or whoever on the team is, the candidate didn't know too much about the job. And I would say, well, I sent in the link, I talked to them, but that's strike one. Strike two is the empathy, the sincere behaviors around why they really want the job. Because we are a non-for-profit with a strong mission. So getting a paycheck is not going to cut it alone. We need you really to be involved. Here's an example, and forgive me, I love examples, right? I'm going to use when we go to Rochester in the education area, and those DSAs and a lot of the teachers, they are really passionate. We have children who are really aggressive, and sometimes they bite, they hit, but I see how they work, and they're not working for that paycheck. They're working because they love it. They love it, and that's the type of employees that we should be, the candidates and folks that we should be hiring. So if they don't show that in an interview, we're done. Number three is just the line of questions. What type of questions are they asking? If they're saying, hello, hiring manager, I don't really have any questions, or just abrupt towards the end, that to me is another strike. If I'm going to an organization, I want to know a little bit more. I want to know, okay, hiring manager, what would the ideal candidate look like? Okay, hiring manager, when you look at performance for this individual, how is performance being measured? If that's not being asked, right, and you can't get that sense and that connection from that candidate, done. And that's only 3 strikes. And we'll have less than 30 to 45 minutes.
Thanks, Hassan. And I actually have 2 more follow-up questions. One just came in, and one was presented to me previously. So this is an interesting one. How important is it to have an option B when choosing a candidate for a key role? In other words, you meet a candidate, you fall in love with them, you absolutely think that they're going to be the right person for the right job. Do you still interview other potential candidates? And if so, why?
Good. And it's always a flip side of the coin. I know my team is probably on this call, Lori, so I'm going to be in some trouble, but it's just transparent. We have this conversation all the time. The job market is hard. So if we're finding the talent acquisition team, if we believe and we found a great candidate for you, for the hiring manager, and the hiring manager says, oh my God, we finally got someone, but can I see more? I'm like, really? Why are you seeing more? And I've said this to my team, always a benchmark. You don't want to, and I say this all the time, again, another corny analogy, when you're out there dating, looking for that significant other, I'm not going with the first person I think is great. I need a benchmark. I've been burnt too many times. So a benchmark is cool. So have a plan B. Recently we've hired a candidate, or a few candidates, who were great, but then maybe a little less than a month into the job, they said, you know what, I'm sorry, it's not me. We had a close runner-up, came in, did a fantastic job. So I tell my team all of this, and we all agree that I know we may think that the hiring manager loves this candidate, and why are they holding and waiting for something more? Because God forbid, if something happens with that A candidate, that first candidate, you want to go back, and especially in this job market, for your second choice, right? Unless there's a large disparity between our A and our B. If it's close, then let's go with the B. Okay? So I'm hoping I answered that question for you.
Okay, that's great, Hassan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And another question is, I love this question, by the way. Many leaders report that they attend to, in this quality of hire discussion, the candidate's attention to detail, the candidate's productivity, the candidates being mission-centered. And the question is, but how important are variables like kindness, like being staff-centered, like generosity? And how does that weave its way into the interview process? How do you assess for that?
Thank you.
And by the way, should you be assessing for that?
The answer is an emphatic yes. The best we can do, and the best a lot of our hiring managers, especially those hiring managers in the last 2 years, have gone through some of the workshops that we have had, is look at situational interviews and behavioral interviews to try to get out exactly about the past behaviors, hopefully that we can understand what's going to go on in the future. But more importantly, I'm going to address your statement. Kindness and generosity are things, and this is just my philosophy, my thought, things that cannot be taught, right? So if you're looking at a person trying to be productive or a person trying to be efficient, we can help them do that. We can teach them to do that. We can't teach kindness and generosity. So for me, especially with the audience we serve, that's critical. And this, I always say this, so forgive what I'm getting ready to say, because something called TMI, too much information I'm getting ready to share with you. I have a financial background. So in my background, it's been Citibanks and Chase of the world, and in academia, universities and colleges, right? So that's all about productivity. Basically, folks, they didn't even say good morning to folks. It's about the bottom line, about making that money. It wasn't about helping the underserved. It wasn't about getting along with your coworker and that sort of thing. It was about just making the money. So in our organization, with our mission and our vision and our direction, we are looking for compassionate type stories. We want some examples of kindness that you have done and shown in your earlier jobs. I'm hoping that answered your query.
Great, Hassan. Thank you. I'm going to stop for a while and let you keep rocking and rolling, and then we'll go back to more questions.
Excellent, because we got about 13 more slides I'm going to try to get through, and again, I'm going to just get to the relevant piece. So again, when you take a look at some of the metrics, we're on slide 10, some of the metrics that we look at from a talent acquisition perspective, especially cost per hire, is how are we managing cost? Are we being creative in our sourcing strategies, right? Every quarter we give our CEO a cost per hire, especially on our clinical roles, because that is one of the most challenging positions to recruit for. And I have one or two team members who specifically work with our clinical roles, especially I'm going to give her a shout out. Karen does a great job and looking at passive candidates outside of agencies. And we all know an agency fee, the minimum, can be let's say 15%, to as high as 30%. And if we can hire internally, we can hire with talent acquisition, or some of you hiring managers, we have saved the organization thousands of dollars. In fact, in one quarter alone, close to $120,000. So that's important. Resumes to hire. The last two are important to me. And we've had the dialogue. Some managers didn't agree, but we've worked it out. It's important. If I have two recruiters and one recruiter has a great intake session with a hiring manager, that's like, hey, Trenton, I got some ideas on how we can fill this role. So can we talk about filling this role before we post this position? I want to make sure I understand your needs. I want to make sure that the resumes that you're looking at, we both can agree that that's what you want before I start hiring for you. So at the end of the day, Trenton hires a very good, talented person, but he's only seen 7. In the past, he's had to see 7 resumes and 7 people. In the past, Trenton had to see maybe 20 or 30 resumes. So for me, as a talent acquisition leader, I'm saying, hey, Trenton, hey, recruiter, it's really important that we do that intake session, the least amount of resumes that the hiring manager has to see to get that talent, to me, I think is great. Last thing on this talent acquisition metrics is time to accept. A lot of our programs are driven by contracts. That means these positions had to be filled yesterday. One of the challenges of my team is they say, Hassan, we don't have enough runway. We got these new programs, we got these new things, and they need people hired yesterday, and they're getting ready to get the contract. So it's important that we immediately fill these roles with talent. So as soon as the position is posted, to when someone accepts, there's a time in between 30 to 45 days, depending on what position is our time to accept. And we look at that based on each program. If it's over a certain amount of time, we're not doing a good job. If it's under a certain amount of time, we're doing a great job. So those are some of the metrics as we move forward. The next 3 slides, I'm not going to go into detail, but I will let everyone know who do not know. A lot of us, and I'm grateful about this, with our travels, talent acquisition travels to different programs, we've talked about our process, we've talked about our structure from talent acquisition, we've customized it to different programs. So the next few slides talk about some of our process. The first thing is an intake call. I'm not going to go through all these 3, but an intake call is important to your position, right? Some of the job descriptions out there, they are not, let's just use the word good. So we need to, our job and our job from an HR perspective is working on the job description. So outside of the job description, what else are we looking for to bring in that talent? And
Hassan, before you go forward, this concept of the job descriptions is interesting. And one of the things that the Innovation Garage onboarding team, which did 3 months, as you said, of research, learning about onboarding, and then presented it to the exec team in June. One of the things they talked about was that our job descriptions are simply not compelling. They don't grab you and make you want to come and work for the agency. They don't inspire you. What are we doing about that?
Good question. And that's been on the table for quite some time. It has now moved to the front. Leadership from our leadership team to our VP of HR have made that an immediate goal. So when we talk about what are we doing about that, number one, it's our immediate goal. We're looking at the job descriptions and making them not only marketable, but making them specific to the programs. We are a growing organization, so we have a lot of different jobs. And to get talent, the first thing we look at is job descriptions. So that is an immediate project that we are working on from the vice president level and above.
Okay, great, thank you. And do you imagine that when this process is complete, that while we have many, many different companies working within our broader organization, that there will be some sort of a structure and a look to our job descriptions, some sort of a collective pizzazz that permeates them?
And indeed, and I say that emphatically because not only did the Onboarding Solutions team come up with some best practices that's out there, my team have had some ideas going forward from the past, and we're going to collaborate, and I will honestly tell you, there are organizations out there, and again, I'm going to say this, and we know this, be it the Googles of the world, right, and the Apples of the world. When you take a look at, and even Johnson & Johnson, where they have so many different programs and so many different product lines, they have job descriptions out there like, wow, this is where it's supposed to be. The organizations that I'm from, and most of us here around the table on this WebEx are from, Citibank, these are important in a talent acquisition process.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Keep going.
All right. Formal job descriptions we've talked a little bit about. We're going to talk more about it. It's important to have the job descriptions. This slide 13, is key to me because, and I say me, and I really mean my team and a lot of the hiring managers actually, because when I first came aboard TMI 2.5 years ago, I used to have it in the back of my mind and say this all the time. We have champagne taste but beer pockets, right? But as we have grown, I can honestly tell you that the leadership team has looked at our, and I have a slide to this, by the way, looked at our compensation and looked at how we can do a better job and bringing in talent and then also compensating them compared to the market. So there are some data here, and I have a slide that I'm going to talk to, but a salary analysis is important and has been done for every role, and that's going to continuously be done. So salary analysis is key in bringing in talent. The requisition process. I will let you know that we are happy to say that we're currently using ADP Recruitment Management, which is RM. We are looking, and I know we've had the onboarding team use this. Just want to let you know the onboarding team, we've used this first. We got a Cadillac in Oracle coming from a requisition process, and it's going to be a simpler, easier process, not just for the hiring managers, not just for talent acquisition, but most importantly for our candidates to apply on the smartphones and on the bus, on the train. It's going to be great, and that's important for us. Posting of the position. And what we've done lately is we've allowed hiring managers insight into finding out where we being held up with the posting of certain requisitions. As we know that it takes 3 or 4 approvers, and certain approvers, we have to remind them, hey, we got this requisition to be posted, we need to hire for. So now our hiring managers are learning they can get into RM, recruitment management, and take a look at, hey, if it's, let's say, for instance, hypothetically, if it's Craig or if it's Grant, hey, Grant, hey, Craig, the requisition is sitting with you. Can you approve it? They've been doing a great job, but even one day lapse, it sometimes can prevent us from moving forward fast enough. So that's important to us as well. Sourcing. It's the sourcing piece is important from a pipeline perspective. Let's have dialogues. Let's continuously have dialogues with the talent acquisition team, and the talent acquisition team being proactive, saying, hey, this is what we're sourcing for your roles. Do you know of any other areas that you want us to source for? These are our paid sites. These are our non-paid sites. This is some of the creative sourcing that we do. I'm going to let you know, recently a lot of our hiring managers said, hey, this local church, as an example, is a fantastic source for candidates. Hey, there's an organization that's going out of business, and they got some good talent. So that type of strategy and dialogue from sourcing standpoint it's really important. And building pipeline. So just because a position is not open, we have a lot of hiring managers that say, okay, talent acquisition team, I know I'm full right now, but let's keep the pipeline going, right? So that's important.
Hassan,
yes.
Speaking of pipeline in a slightly different concept, someone just posed the question to me via email. How do you use the Salesforce pipeline, which is used by many, many individuals across the agency, to talk about opportunities and to track an opportunity from just a lead all the way through to, contract signed? How do you use the information housed within Salesforce to actually drive the work of the talent acquisition team? Excellent question. And can I tell you, I'm smiling because if we had all day, it would be fantastic. I get excited about this because, and I'm going to say some names. I have 2 members of my team now, as of this week, Karen and Nancy, working on an email, some verbiage that we're going to be sending out to those practice area and program area heads when we see a new, some business in Salesforce. So it's an email saying something hypothetically like this. Hey, Lori, and by the way, Lori, you have something in the pipeline. Hey, Lori, I see you got some new business that you're looking, that's probably going to come soon. We want to be proactive. We want to take a look at what area are you looking at? If it's in New Hampshire, what specific area in New Hampshire? Have you looked at the labor force? What's the compensation range? Is it competitive? Can we have that dialogue while you're in these early stages, right? I will let you know, Lori, that 2 of the practice area heads, all of them are doing a great job, but 2 specifically,
Dr. Harold, Don Harold, and Robin Fisk, they have reached out to us at the same time, I say us being talent acquisition, and say, hey, I'm going to let you know we got this coming down the pipeline. It's in Salesforce. Let's have a conversation. We're not sure exactly when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Let's prepare. I need to make sure this is done by this date. I need some job descriptions that are marketable, that are specific, that can attract good talent. We need to make sure the classification codes are correct, exempt and non-exempt, all of that stuff before the contract comes to fruition.
Excellent. So if I'm working, for example, and I think many of you may be participating in the development, let's say, of a proposal, and that RFP has been put on Salesforce as a potential new business opportunity, that means that I can be confident that HR is looking at Salesforce and saying, wow, if we get this, and let's use Breaking the Cycle in Maine, and I know there's folks from Maine on the call, hey, if we get Breaking the Cycle, when we wrote for it, we are going to need to have staff in 16 offices. And it's going to have to be this diversity of staff. So we better get inside the highways and byways of Maine and get to know what are the feeders and where are the sources, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in some ways it's got to be comforting for our broader staff who are working on business development and growth opportunities to know that there's actually work being done behind the scenes to make sure that we have the staff when we need them. Thank you.
Yeah, and to your point, and to be transparent once again, if you were to give us a grade of using Salesforce and collaborating with our program or practice area leads a little bit more than a year ago, it would be a C-, right? I believe we're now, probably we can get a B because we are being proactive. However, just a B is not an A. So there's obviously some room for improvement. I just told you that we're working on an email and it's like a template so we can dialogue with the practice and program leaders ahead of time to really get in front of some of these things, especially and as we're growing. Right now, I can probably tell you, if you take a look in Salesforce, 14 or 15 different business opportunities for us out there. So when I take a look at, even from a staffing standpoint, when I told you a little bit over 200 plus positions currently, if you look at Salesforce, that's an additional 150 to 200 positions possible. So I have to be strategic from a talent acquisition perspective with the hiring managers, with the program area heads to make sure that we can exceed these needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So easy slide, strategy to find talent. So a few of us don't know this, but most of us do. I'm glad. It's about sourcing, right? It's about sourcing talents, looking, when a position is posted, please understand this, and a lot of us do, but please understand, just because we post a position out there, those are aggressive seekers. Those folks who are looking at FedCap, right? We are looking for folks, our best candidates, and being transparent, is passive folks, right? Folks who are not even looking to leave their job, but we're reaching out to them. You hiring managers, there's been a lot of great hiring managers who've been collaborated with TAT. So sourcing is key, right? And assessments. We're looking at a lot of different assessment tools now, and I'm hoping that we get approved for one or two assessments when it's personality or behavioral assessments that we're going to add to, especially a higher level director or assistant director level and above positions. When you talk about assessments, a subcategory of assessments is before we even assess in the interview process, we have learned so much from behavioral interviewing, using emotional intelligence in the interviews, and trying to understand body language and behaviors before we hire folks. Referrals are key. We love referrals, and your hiring managers are doing a great job with this, but we have to continue this from a referral standpoint. Passive recruiting we just talked about. Folks out there who don't know anything about leaving their current job, but now they're being talked to by a hiring manager or an employee or talent acquisition team. And the last thing that I need to talk about, I want to spend a second more is service level agreements. We ask in a talent acquisition team function that our hiring managers improve in one area. So we're going to improve in an area. We're asking you guys to improve in one area, is response time. If we are going to ensure that we get you guys the resumes and the candidates and we send it over to you and you don't give us feedback 3 and 4 days, the ticker is moving. You're not getting the quality. Your program is suffering. You're probably doing extra work, and we got candidates calling us. Say, hey, Michael, on talent acquisition team, I didn't like this resume or I didn't like this candidate because, so we can move on. We can input that information into our system and move on to the next one to get you more quality type candidates and resumes. So we're asked that if we have a 24-hour service level agreement of response time for a talent acquisition team, we ask of you to give us some response time within 2 days of letting us know what's happening with the candidate, letting us know what's happening with the resume you like or you don't like. Because again, someone that we like today, yesterday, someone loved that person. So please understand that. And listen, and this is just slide 19 is just a few of our job boards that we use. Paid job boards and non-paid job boards. LinkedIn has been fantastic, ZipRecruiter, and it's a blessing that I'm working for an organization, and I have a slide I talked to you about that a lot of the non-for-profits don't have a lot of the opportunity to use a lot of our job boards, right? And we've done some research. I've made some telephone calls. My team have made some telephone calls to validate this. We have a full LinkedIn agreement. We have ZipRecruiter. Handshake has been fantastic with the colleges that we reach out into different communities amongst all of our states with. Idealist, Indeed. I'm going to be honest with you. When I first came to our organization, I heard that we use Craigslist in certain areas. I'm like, we're not selling furniture. But again, a lot of our positions were filled via Craigslist. I didn't know about that, right? Monster Career Builder, and there's a list of other job boards, specialized job boards, especially clinical, that we use to bring in our talent. So when this slide is important, so when you're dialoguing with talent acquisition team, our hiring managers, and our employees, ask them, what job boards are you using? What methods are you using to source and recruit? And then you add to it, and they'll talk, and that dialogue and that communication is important. Now, to the last few slides, and then I know we talk about looking at the needs of our talent and our needs of...
Hassan, I've got a lot of questions on this slide, so you start and then I'll jump in. No, you start and I'll jump in.
Gotcha, okay. So, our top-notch talent. And again, here's how we can all understand the next few slides. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of new talent coming in our organization. So put yourself in that position for a second. Brand new, right? What do you need? You need a safe and healthy work environment, right? You need communication. Communicate. Talk to me. Be honest with me. You guys hear me use the word transparent all the time. My team will tell you that Hassan is transparent. Sometimes it's painful, but it's important, right? I need to know about my performance. What am I not doing? Don't always give me the good stuff. Constructively tell me what I need to improve on. And don't wait 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line. Let's talk about it immediately. Flexibility. And when I say flexibility, I do know that most of us, especially A personalities, we like to work 12 to 14-hour days. That is not healthy, guys. Not healthy at all. Make sure we get the work done. If there's some work we can't get done that next day, manage the process for the next day. Please understand that there's burnout involved. A good fit, not just for our organization, but for your area. So you're looking for skill set, you're looking for behaviors, and you're also ensuring that it fits within your program, that personality, that person fits within your program. Goals, there should be not one employee, even from a higher level position, that don't have a goal, right? A metric involved. One of the things that, again, that Lori is doing and leading with a group is metrics. Right? We have that for our children. We have that in education. We should have that ongoing throughout our organization. We are a not-for-profit, but with a for-profit mindset, and that's driven by goals. Diversity and learning opportunities. I will tell you this, in the last 9 months of my career here, I have done a lot more of training and workshops, and that's because a lot of the programs, and I'm going to give a tremendous amount of kudos to Dr. Harrell's group. I'm going to talk about workforce development, and definitely Robert Ryder is getting ready to roll out some workshop pieces. Other departments and other programs are doing just that, of learning opportunities. They're tapping into some of the things that the engagement team is doing in other areas. Learning. We need to learn. We want to learn. If we have the in-house talent, Lori Lutz's team has some great folks who can come out and train as well. We have to use that because that is actually a perk. Learning is a perk. You guys being on this call is a perk for you and definitely a perk for me. Acknowledgement and motivation, and I'm going to move past this, but this is important. If we're not saying thank you to our employees or great jobs and give them some specific and acknowledging them, something is wrong. Because again, every employee, I don't care what level, need acknowledgement and motivation. Because they always hear the negative, they do not hear enough acknowledgement and motivation. So that's how we keep talent.
Hassan, I've got a couple of questions that tie to this, as I indicated. I'll just back up a little bit because I got a question via email that sometimes when the talent acquisition team members take legitimate vacations, which are needed, the backup, we can lose a week easily in the recruitment process. And the question is, what are you doing to ensure that there's a crossover of responsibilities so that doesn't occur? Because that week can be really precious in the functioning of an agency or a program. That's question number one.
And you're right. And one of the things, and most people who know me on this call, I'm extremely accountable, right? So, and my team who are on this call will tell you, we just had a meeting Friday, and number one on our agenda is we are dropping the ball when we're going on vacation and not allowing another teammate to assist. I do understand, and I was empathetic, I do understand we're all at requisition capacity. However, then that means I need to get involved more. Don't just tell your hiring managers you're on vacation for only a week and I'm going to give you a resume or two and you'll interview. We need to do a better job. And as your leader, I will guarantee you that I'll take on more responsibility. But to your point, hiring managers, to your point, Lori, we have not, from a talent acquisition purposes, and it's just recently, and I'm telling you transparently, in the last 3 months, with some of the turnover and the capacity, we dropped the ball there. But I am letting the team know who's listening that we're going to do a better job with that.
Great, Hassan. And we're all running fast, and I get that so much. And as we continue to grow and evolve, that's what we appreciate, is just the transparency that we're all doing, the best we can, but we all agree we want to do better, and I love that. I have 2 more questions around this whole concept of keeping staff. This is an interesting question, and you need to accept the premise of the question to answer it, but what do you find has been the reason for nonprofits not being able to hold on to some talented individuals, and how can HR assist in the retention process? So the first is, why can't we hold on to some talented individuals, and then the second is, what can HR do to help us hold on to them?
Excellent. And I love that query. And for those of us who have, especially it's a few people around the tables and listening on this WebEx who have for-profit experience, right? The turnover in organizations in the last 2 years have been on an all-time high. And I'm going to tell you this again. I know we're not for profit, and we should just be focusing on us, but it's permeating throughout industry, for-profit and not-for-profit. Why? Because what's happening is employees are no longer staying at jobs like they used to stay at jobs, right? Especially with a lot of folks got some skill set. We have employees poaching. But let's get back to us, non-for-profits. Areas that HR can help in is when you see the performance reviews and the performance reviews are disconnected because we have performance reviews about employees that they're not fully completed or employees' response raises a red flag, it's imperative that we get involved and get out to those businesses and ask what's happening. Get out to those businesses and say, all right, hiring manager, all right, employee, what can we do to improve? What's going on with the communication? What's going on with understanding of the job? Are we hiring up right people? What are you communicating? Are you motivating? So that's from an HR perspective we can definitely do. And also, and I'm gonna share something with you that hopefully is immediately on the horizon. We talked about it. I know that we got some things in motion, but temperature checks, organization temperature checks. That means sending out responses and asking our employees, having focus groups, what should we be improving in our organization? What areas, right? Because listening to our employees and not just assuming that the turnover is because of this or the turnover is because of this is extremely important. So HR can do a better job and getting out there and listening to the employees. Let's have some more focus groups. The focus groups that we most recently started having are important. It can be driven by HR as well. Listening to the employees, those things are important from an HR perspective. If it's you're saying, Hassan, in one specific area, can you make sure that HR looks at the turnover from an HRIS component, meaning how many folks are turning over? Is this natural turnover? Is it should be turning over at this one level? Or there's some concerns, some red flags? We should be partnering with the hiring managers and the program managers with that data.
Thank you, Hassan, so much. And maybe this is an interesting kind of additional question in this area. How will technology factor into the nonprofit world? And can you see HR recruiting, I love this question, for more tech geniuses? I love that.
So there's a number of different answers, different ways. I'm going to do the best I can to summarize a lot of it. First of all, technology is key. We see it every day. We cannot get on we cannot walk down the street. We can't get on a train or get on a bus or do anything without seeing that everyone is tied into cell phones, right? How is that important from a branding perspective, from a recruitment perspective, just communication perspective. So from a technology standpoint, our organization, and we're doing a good job. We're starting to do a good job. The approval from our executive team to get Oracle for a recruiting standpoint. Now, you're talking about technology with Oracle. We're going to have performance management alerts. We're going to have our balances, our benefits balances, structured better in the system where it's true numbers. We're going to have employees input their life changes. That's going to improve data. So technology is going to help our organization as we move towards 1 billion. At any given time, we should have a practice area head saying, hey, HR, how many folks in my department currently have bachelor's degrees? And they should be able to pull that information up. How many employees in my department are underperforming based on their performance reviews? Oh my God, technology, let's pull that up because that information is key. Now, your other question about having folks who have technology background and that technological skill set, that's really important. We are seeing more of that out there. Our millennials, they come to the table with a good, strong knowledge of technology. And the competition, and it's the last piece I'm going to talk about this, the competition abroad. Folks who are coming in into the U.S., taking a lot of the IT-type jobs and technology jobs, is us identifying those folks and also bringing them on our team as well.
So thank you so much for that, Hassan. So we have an additional question. How do you prevent the fear of losing an employee to a bigger opportunity within the organization? And are we truly, so it's interesting, I have this great employee and I don't want to lose him, but at the same time I want to encourage upward mobility. How do we do that dance?
I didn't hear that last piece. Did you say how do we do that down?
I said, how do we do that dance?
Okay, yeah, thank you, the dance. Okay, first of all, and this is an area that I have taught many years, and it's had some disagreements with other managers and hiring managers, but again, it has worked and has been successful and has been a best practice and a best practicing thought. As a leader, our job is to train, to motivate, to grow our employees. At the end of the day, and again, here's the corny analogy, at the end of the day is almost like a parent. You're raising something and then you have to let it go. And then when it gets out there, if it sprouts its wings, if it makes added value to another program, another practice in our organization, you are considered even greater. Because they're saying, hey, I used to report to Michael. Michael was great. I used to report to Ann, and Ann was great. That type of understanding that leadership grow and culture and cultivate their employees, they will have to at one point let go. And that's important to me when you're looking at retaining people as well, because listen, if we don't look at that, if we don't do that and understand that we want to keep them in-house, someone else on the outside will steal them. So that's important to me, and that's a great understanding.
Yeah, I think what is so important is to say, this idea, I think I heard you say, Hassan, is that the best, the very best message about a leader is if their people move on to incredible jobs.
Yes, ma'am.
That says a great deal about who they are. So I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. The appreciation slide, the last few slides, the appreciation slide is something that I can honestly tell you I've seen permeating now across our organization. And this is, for me, it makes me feel really good about, even better about our organization. Shout-outs, awards and certificates. Hopefully we'll get to the newsletter piece, be it electronically. Email acknowledgement. And I'm laughing because one of the things that folks who know me and been through my workshops and had the opportunity to interact with me know that if I hear something good about an employee, or if an employee writes something or does something great, I'm going to reply all to their management team and say, hey, Valerie, as an example, great job, great leadership. It's a pleasure to work with you, right? That in itself sends a great message to our employees throughout the organization, right?
Hassan, I'm just going to jump in there and do an advertisement that not everyone on the phone may be aware of, but okay. In about 2.5 months ago, we launched Let's Hear It for Our Staff. It's okay. On the intranet, and any time an individual wants to acknowledge one of their staff members for doing a great job, they fill out a very, very simple form, zip it to the communications at fedcap.org email, and we post it online. And if anybody who's listening to this call wonders about that form, not only we also placed it on the shout-out, the last shout-out. So there is a vehicle in place for our organization to really celebrate the richness of the individuals. And then I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that the intranet is our agency-wide newsletter. We give news and announcements about events and about things that have happened, celebrations. So anybody that is in the organization has access to SharePoint and therefore has access to our agency newsletter.
Excellent. And Laura, well said. And can I tell you, I was extremely happy to see that. But if I might add a caveat to that, it's imperative that when we continuously do this successfully, everyone, that the feedback, the acknowledgments are specific. So I would say something like this. Lori, I want to thank you very much for driving this WebEx process. One of the things that it felt good was it was organized, it was succinct, and I got a lot of information. I think our audience got a lot of information out of that. That's better than saying, guys, Lori, great job. So again, please understand that specific information is important. As I go through the last three pieces on slide 22 on appreciation, outings are good. A few departments and programs do a great job. They get together one night or a month or every other month, and they'll go bowling or they'll do something together as a team, right? When you look at the Googles and the Microsofts of the world and some of the other great organizations, they do things together. They have successes and good times together. So outings doesn't have to cost a lot. Go somewhere locally. Have a little bowling event, something to that important. Talked about verbal acknowledgments and definitely so much more. Last few slides talk about core values. When we talk about our program.
Hassan, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I have another question that just came in. I think it's an interesting one. It says you mentioned succession planning. Can you say more about how succession planning impacts retention?
Thank you very much for allowing me to talk about that. The first thing is to do for our leaders. I'm using the word leaders, managers, our hiring managers, is to take a step back, take 30 minutes out of your time, close the door or get in a nice little quiet area, a cubicle or whatever you want to be. Take a look at your employees, right? Take a look at the strengths of your employees. God forbid, if you had to leave this organization tomorrow, who could step up? If no one can step up, what are the areas that they need to strengthen? What are the areas that you need to focus on as a leader? Because if you identified on a flip switch, identify someone who can fill your shoes or someone who's close to filling your shoes, that's great succession planning. Have that dialogue with them because everyone wants to, an employee wants to know, all right, what's my next steps? What's happening? What do I need to do to improve? I like what you're doing, Michael. Can you show me a little bit more about that outside of my job when I get the opportunity? Succession planning is key, and those are some of the things we can do. But first is about looking at our bench strength, looking where we are, looking at the deficiencies or anything to get them where they need to be, and identifying some of the strengths in succession planning.
And I think a follow-up to that, Hassan, another question just came in. Thank you, folks. The questions are starting to pour in. I'm trying not to interrupt Hassan's flow, but I want to honor as many as I can. This is an interesting question. What is the role of our ability to articulate our culture and our values and how we manifest them with our ability to retain quality staff? Now, I think the articulation and then the manifesting obviously are two separate things, but this is an interesting question that I think bears a lot of discussion across the agency.
Okay, so when you say articulate our values, right, so the first thing, and this is a great slide, and we're on slide 23 and we talk about our values, is that it's important first to identify our values, right? And it's important to know that, and there's some programs and some hiring managers that can probably, they can't define the value proposition. They can't define some of the values for their particular program. And if you can't define that and clearly articulate that, how are our employees supposed to understand that and move forward with that? How are we supposed to hire to our value proposition? So that's critical, is identifying some strengths, 2 to 3 strengths as it relates to our values, and being able to sum it up, right? So when you take a look at talent acquisition as an example, right? It is serving the needs of our program. It is being responsive to our program, our programs and hiring managers. It is being creative in our sourcing, right? And if I can't tell you about some of the areas that we should improve on in our values, then that's automatically a problem for us. So those are some of the things that we should need to sit around the table with our team and talk about, identify, then discuss. The last slide here, and I'm going to open up the floor to a lot of queries, more queries. On slide 24, the team, my team, and also my academic team, because a few of you do know this, I am an adjunct professor at a number of colleges and universities. So these are just a few of the non-for-profits that I had my undergrads and grads look into as we have moved forward from a talent acquisition perspective and benchmarking, finding out what they have done and not done successfully. There are a number of people on this slide who are in HR that I have personal connections with via my LinkedIn. When you guys take a look at my LinkedIn, like most of you have, you will notice that I have a contact person on well over 70 or 75 of some of our non-for-profits. So a lot of the information from that particular standpoint, and still more to come. And one of the interesting things is we keep talking about non-for-profits. We should be measuring ourselves when you take a look at our growth with the Johnson & Johnsons of the world, right? When they and how they're growing. So this list should also be inclusive of for-profits. But I just want to share some of the non-for-profits that I've received some of the information from throughout my years here at FedCap. All right, Lori, I'm ready for more.
I think that we are done. As I look at the, yeah, I know this, but that was a lot of questions. And maybe this is a good way to end it, Hassan. This is a great question, and we can end a little bit early. That's fine. This is maybe I think a good way to end it. Please discuss the ways in which we can create an environment of engaged, energized, and curious staff. What can we do to create an agency-wide environment of engaged, energized, and curious staff? Let's end on that great question.
Excellent. Energized and curious. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. First of all, and a few of us around this, listening to this WebEx have heard this from me, so forgive me, this is going to be a refresher, but it's first really about looking internally at ourselves as a leader, as a manager, hiring manager, and employee, and saying, what are the areas that I need to improve on with my employees? I already know, I can tell you right now that there are 7 or 8 things in each employee that I know I can improve upon. I got that. We got that. We understand that. We know you can identify that. But internally, reflective, what are the areas that I can improve upon, right? And why that's important? Because when an employee understands that they don't believe that you're perfect and you're closed to ideas and you're closed to suggestions, they are more able to trust you and create that bond. They're more able to say, okay, Hassan, as an example, I know you've had 15 to 20 years of experience in this area, but you do know I probably bring 3 or 4 areas of experience, and I know that you want to listen, right? So that's important. Trust is important in a relationship when you're trying to engage people. And listening, right? So I say listening is not about how much you talk. It's about what are they listening? What are they hearing? So in order for you to engage a person, you have to understand the body language. Emotional intelligence is key in this process. Understanding their likes and dislikes, right? So that's how you engage a person. Understanding and listening, and saying to myself, I got to be quiet for a second. I got to listen for a second. When you talk a little bit about being curious, you got to promote being curious. So what does that mean, Hassan, promote being curious? I say to my staff, and I'm hoping that a lot of hiring managers say to your staff, okay, it's easy to identify a problem. Every time you come to me, I want a problem and 2 solutions, possible solutions. I don't care how far-fetched they are. I want 2 solutions. So that's going to train a behavior in your employee to be curious about finding a solution, right? Because anyone can find a problem, but how many people are curious enough to give me a solution at that time? So these are the things as hiring managers we need to do. I can tell you that it's about HR, human resources. But what is human resources? Human resources is us, is you guys. So without a true partnership and that collaboration, I'm always open to listen. I'm hoping that you as hiring managers, you as managers, you as employees understand that together we can get this done. We can't be siloed. So engagement and the curiosity starts within trust and listening and understanding our employees and the folks we're talking to.
Okay, I actually think we are done, Hassan, and I have no more questions. You've just done an amazing job. I want to give a shout out to you for your preparation and really how much you took this so seriously to give the very best information possible. Again, I think I can speak for Hassan. If individuals have questions, you can ask him directly. But I think that we are done for the day. Thank you so much. And everyone, have just a great, great afternoon. And we'll see you next month in our Brown Bag Lunch series.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.